Well, Happy New Year's, folks. I'm Random at Random Rod Shop. Welcome back to the channel. I think today we're going to do something just a little bit different. I started this YouTube channel thinking that, well, I'm doing the work anyway, and I'm always trying, looking for trying something else new. So it's been a ride. Started the channel about 4 months ago. Didn't know anything about the camera, didn't know anything about the editing software. Hi, if you've been watching the videos, you know I've had my own trials and tribulations in terms of that aspect of it. I'm not going to say we got it figured out yet, but I think we're ahead of where we were, and it's been fun. I pulled the International in because I knew the learning curve on starting the YouTube was going to be pretty big. So I wanted a project that was pretty, in my mind, pretty straightforward. So we went ahead and pulled the International in. If you're not familiar, it's a 1970, and in a lot of the videos I said it was a 71, but it's a 1970 International half-ton pickup. It was my dad's truck, and we've got it sitting on a 2002 116-inch wheelbase Tahoe. I guess that's the regular Tahoe. They make an XL or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's 116-inch wheelbase. It's got the 5.3 in it. 4L60. At this point, if you can go back and look at the videos, but at this point, I got it started, and I haven't made that regular video yet. I showed that yesterday in sort of a compilation, but I got it started. Still got some bugs to work out on it in terms of the running of it. The next phase of it, we're going to do the body work and stuff. Nothing fancy. I just need to fix the holes, right? Today's video, I thought it would be useful to take you around and show you the projects we got going on and kind of give you an idea of what's coming. This International project, once I get it running and driving so we can back in and back out, and we can start working the bugs out of it, we're going to get back on the regular projects. And then we'll work on this one piece at a time. So we'll just start right here. I'm going to take the camera off tripod, and from here on out, I'm just going to be a talking head in the background, and we're going to walk around, we're going to look at all the projects. So we'll start with this one. Doesn't look like a big, doesn't look like a big block Chevy or anything. This happens to be the parts to get a 66 Datsun Roadster up and running. We've got a 300ZX that had the VG30 in it that was fuel injected and stuff like that, but we're going to carburate it. So this is a throttle body. I don't even remember what it was off of. It's off of a like an 80s Nissan pickup. Anyway, it's a throttle body. I got a 2-barrel Weber here. We're going to get this mounted to this, and on the distributor, which is a little more interesting, right? This distributor is an HEI off of a V6 Chevy, which, interestingly enough, the shaft size for the VG30 distributor is the same as a small block Chevy. So we'll have to cut the shaft off, but this is the lower section off of the Nissan Datsun distributor. Once I improve my TIG welding skills, we're going to weld the top half of that HEI onto the bottom half of that VG30 distributor. At that point, we'll have a vacuum advanced distributor, HEI, and we'll have a carburetor. I think the motor's only got like 80,000 miles on it, so the motor should be good. And I've actually got 2 of the 300ZXs. Both of them are 5 speeds. So that project is coming up. It's going to have to wait until I'm confident I can weld that cast aluminum with the TIG. So we're going to be practicing in the background on the TIG because I've never TIG'd before. The next one is I have been wanting a lathe for a long time, and so I've been gathering parts. This is a Logan 11, which I believe has a through hole big enough to do what I want to do. The Logan 10 and 9 and I don't remember the numbers. I think it's, I don't know, like 1.125" on a Logan 10. I should know this, but I don't remember. Anyway, this one's like 1.3". So, just about to get it up and going. I've got to make a take-up nut for this, and we're going to try to do that ourselves. I've got a hole saw, and I actually bought a tap so I can tap the threads. I would use this, but because this was a collet lathe when I got it, but the threads are all stripped out, so I need another nut. And the nuts are like $85 plus $20 shipping. So in the end, I'd rather build this, make it myself. Don't know if that's a good idea, but that's just the way we do it around here. Anyway, I've got the quick change tool post coming. I think I get the nut, and I've got to take that apart and get it all cleaned up. I just got this hand wheel. So anyway, it doesn't work as smooth as I'd like it to work. It's got a 3-phase motor on it, which hopefully isn't a problem. When we go over to the cars on my and behind me, I'm working on a 3-phase converter, so I think we'll have this all set up where to run, but the reason I want to do that involves this rear end and actually another rear end outside. So this is a 12-bolt Chevy rear end out of a square body, and I want to put disc brakes on it. That rotor is off of a 2000 Jeep Grand Cherokee. That caliper is off of a 2010 Grand Caravan. And the reason I chose that one is, even though I'm not real keen on those emergency brakes, those cable operated emergency brakes, that makes this swap a whole lot easier. The downside is, and you'll have to forgive me if I've forgotten my numbers, the hole at the end of the rotor is like 66 millimeters, the pilot hole, and the axle is like 72 or 73. So the rotor doesn't want to go on the axle. Now, that one actually is on there, but what we did, I've got it laying here somewhere. Let's see. All right, it was laying right in front of me. All right, so we made this, and what we did was, there's 2 little dimples in the end of the axle that those little bolts go in. I had my youngest son chuck that up in a drill and hold it against the axle and turn that axle while I held a grinder up to the pilot on the axle. So we got the pilot on the axle ground down so that it fits this Jeep brake drum or brake rotor. And the reason I wanted to do that is I want to be able to just go to the parts house and buy a brake rotor without having to do any work to it. So I'm perfectly okay with cutting the pilot down on this axle, because once I get this brakes on it, I can tell you, I'm not putting drum brakes back on the thing. A lot of discussion about whether drum brakes are better than disc brakes, and in my world, it's so much easier to change the brakes on a disc brake one. I don't do, high performance driving where I need all of that extra braking action. I live in the flatlands. I don't have big hills, so we're going with disc brakes. Anyway, that project needs to be finished, because as you will figure out when this video is done, kind of do a lot of Chevy stuff. So I want a kit to put disc brakes on the back of all my damn square bodies. I think I've about got the mount figured out, and that hangs over a little bit farther. That mount is inset a little further than I want, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to do what Ford did on the Fox bodies. If you guys are familiar with Fox bodies, they actually put a bracket here and put a U-bolt across that bracket to hold it to the axle. They called it an anti-moan bracket, but basically it keeps the keeps the disc brake mount from moving around. So I think in the end it'll be solid. So get the lathe together so that I can do this. All right, I'm gonna flip you around and let's look at the cars over here. All right, I'll try to find a picture of this car before we brought it in. Now, I put this car in the pasture sometime in the 80s. I can't remember. I don't remember. Parked it out in the pasture. My oldest son's friend needed parts, and it was a complete car at that time. I think he took the front end sheet metal, I think the doors, the trunk lid. Then we had a fire in the barn where I had parts, so effectively all that was left of this car was the hull. No doors, no front. I did have a subframe, but it had been sitting in the mud, so I've got a different subframe that it doesn't have any rust. It's got surface rust on it, but it doesn't have any real rust on it. I've got all new suspension components for the front. I have located original fenders. I've got an SS hood. Those are original doors. That is an SS trunk lid. You can see I've put quarters on it. In reality, this car has new sheet metal from the dash all the way back to the rear valence. Frame rails, floor pans. You can see I've got it set up on some I-beams. That's actually a frame jig. The thing I was excited about, this car wasn't bent. Once I laid out this frame jig, I set the body on, it set right down into the assembly holes. So far as I can tell, this car hasn't been bent. It just had a lot of rust on it. The rear end is a 12-bolt rear end, and you kind of can't hardly see it there. I've got stuff piled on, but it's a 12-bolt rear end that I have narrowed. It came out of an Impala, so it's got the big pinion. It had the big axle bearings, but I decided to put rear disc brakes off of a 2000 Camaro, so I cut the end of the axles off. I needed to shorten the axle anyway, so I cut the end of the axle tube off, welded on the two axle tube ends off of the 2000 Camaro, Firebird Camaro, I don't remember which one it was. So this will be 12-bolt rear end. It'll have disc brakes. Also, I pulled the disc brakes off of the front of the Camaro. And so this car will be 4-wheel disc brakes, and you'll just be able to go to the parts house and buy. On the front brakes, it's like 92, 93 to 2002. And then on the rear disc brakes, I think they started at 98. It was 4 years, so 98 to 2002. Anyway, getting most of the parts. You can see you can kind of see a seat in there. The steering column is it's a factory manual steering column. I've got original bucket seats. These happen to be 68s, but I've got the metal seat backs. I think the last piece of the seat stuff is I don't have a back spring yet. I've got the bottom springs, but I don't have the back springs yet. I don't know what else I can tell you about this, but the sheet metal, the rough sheet metal is almost done. I need to get under it, and I need to grind and check the hundreds of spot welds and stuff that I've made under the bottom, sand, grind, and I need to paint the bottom. I want to do that before I take it off this jig. But I am excited about getting it down on wheels. The last major sheet metal is the rocker on the other side. So you can kind of see it laying across the dash there. I've got it fitted, but I got into it, and the inner stiffener back on the back of the rocker, back in here, there's an inner, a middle, and an outer. I need to get into that middle layer on the other side. So that's a bigger project, but once I pulled the International in here and I shoved these cars together, I haven't got room to work on it, and I need this International moving. 1967 Mustang Fastback. We bought this off my wife's uncle's. It's a complete car. I've got all the pieces for it. We've been doing the sheet metal. It has new cowl vent, upper and lower cowl. The firewall is new, and it has the floor pans in it. Put front frame rails on it, put a new core support in it. It has the front aprons on it, and I think I put one of the shock towers in it. I've got 3-degree camber upper control arms in it. I've already done the Shelby drop on it. It currently has an 8-inch rear end. I haven't decided yet, but a Explorer rear end I think works pretty well. I don't know if I'm going to do that. I've got a disc brake rear end out of a Grand Marquis that would allow me to center up the pinion, and I just order axles. So probably going to do that. I don't know. I've got an extra posi track for an 8/8, so that may be the easiest thing to do is just order a set of axles, cut down the Grand Marquis, put the posi track in it, and call it done. Because the Explorer's, the pinion's offset. The Mustangs have a centered pinion in them, so I just soon do that. I think we're about done with the major sheet metal. I'm waiting to get this in epoxy. I'm gonna have to go over it with Evapo-Rust because it's got some surface rust on it. But I'm waiting to epoxy prime this because I want to do that at the same time. Right? If I have to buy that primer, I just want to use it all at the same time. So kind of waiting on getting this Camaro up on wheels so I can move it around so we can epoxy prime them. Let me go open that door and we'll start on the outside. You know, I almost forgot. That is one of the projects I'm going to show you. That's short wide bed sides for a 62, 61, somewhere in there to 66. Anyway, I've got a 63 that's a short bed, but it has a step side bed on it, and we're going to make a short wide bed out of it. So there's the 6.0. That one's a 5.3. You can kind of see that when I build tools, I build them because I need them right now. As I use them and I figure out how they really need to be made, then I rebuild them into what I really need. What you're looking at there is an engine stand, a run stand if you will, and I don't know if I can get around there, but I've incorporated a engine stand on it, so you can actually rotate the engine on there and you can use it as an engine stand. Then once you get it as an engine stand, you put the motor mount legs under it, and it's set up to run the engine. Anyway, that is going to go on my pickup, and I'll show you the pickup. That one's just, I don't know which one that's going to go into. This is a 1993 four-wheel drive dually crew cab. I'm not sure that I have a whole lot of interest in that, but I do want the frame. My youngest son would like to have a square body dually crew cab with four-wheel drive and modern drivetrain. This one has the 6.5 turbo diesel. You know, it's not the Duramax, but in terms of just driving it around, seems to work out okay. I've got a 93 sitting over here that was my wife's dad's pickup that just runs like a top and does everything we need to do with it. This has the automatic transmission, four-wheel drive, so pulled the cab off this weekend and trying to lay out the body mounts for the cab, and I'll show you the cab we got going on it. But that's another project. This is a 68 Impala. In itself, it's not a project, but this actually has a 454 and a 4-speed in it that I built at some point, and it's fun, but we're trying to get a title for a 67 four-door hardtop. Anyway, get a title, this one may come into play. Square body, short bed, nothing fancy. I don't know if that one's going to be a project or not. I use that more of a test mule for fitting parts. Right now, in case you're wondering, the seats out of a Silverado don't fit in these things. I have worked and worked and worked, and that seat just doesn't fit. Right? Not only are the headrests make it look ugly, but the the seat's set up too high. There's just no way to cut them down unless you want to get rid of that seat belt. This isn't a project, but this is sort of a bucket list truck for me. My dad tried to give me a 60, I think it was a 69 short wide bed V8 truck when I was in high school. And I'm like, I don't want no stinking truck, Dad. Anyway, I have looked and looked and looked. Still couldn't find a short wide bed that, I was willing to pay for, so we built one. Ordered the bed sides from LMC. I think that's the only way, given what people want for short wide beds. I don't know why anybody just don't buy new bed sides. Anyway, this is sort of this is my truck. This is the one I puddle jump in. But I finally found the truck that I really wanted. Still gonna have to make it, but it's a 67 small back window. That's a factory short bed frame. This is the other project I want to work on the lathe. So those pilot hubs are huge. I would really like to fit the disc brakes off of a Silverado. If that doesn't work out, I'm going to cut down the axle on a Silverado and mount it in here so it's still 6 lug, but it's the modern axle or modern brakes and everything. Going to try to do the same to the front. Now this one I have no idea. I may end up having to buy the 6 lug disc brake rotors. I don't know, but whatever it is, the plan is for it to be 6 lug. I'll go ahead and order the bed sides off of LMC. I've got a couple of long beds that I can use the pieces off of. I just need the bed sides. This one needs a lot of work. It's going to need cab corners, it's going to need rockers, it's going to need the header panel. I don't know if you can see that, but it's going to need the panel above the windshield, inside and out. That's okay. This is like my bucket list truck right here. All right, interesting story on this truck. When my youngest one turned 16, he wanted a square body, and we bought this truck. And then my dad's truck kind of went belly up, so ended up, okay, take that truck. Well, apparently my young sons never forgot that, so when I said, hey, you don't want to make a four-wheel drive out of Dottie's truck? He said, well, that was my truck anyway. Anyway, so this was a long bed Big 10 truck. Come up with a four-wheel drive short bed running gear, so we just stuck the cab on that running gear. This one is getting closer. The thing that's kind of holding it up, and if you watch one of the earlier videos, the inner fender well, that was for this truck. I still got another piece of rust to fix on that inner fender well, but we were trying to put all the pieces together, and I don't know if you can see that, but at some point we hit that fender, and that fender is pushed in right here. So we're going to try pulling that fender out. I think that's going to be an interesting job. Probably going to end up welding something here, and tying it to a tractor so I can pull on the top of that thing, because it's all double layer there, and I'm just going to try. We'll figure it out. Okay, now we're going to have to do some walking. So here's the crew cab square body that we plan on putting on that 93. You can see we've already done round one of the thinking. Thought, okay, let's put this on a standard length 1 ton, but we came up with a 93 and it's 4-wheel drive. It's got the diesel, got the automatic, so it was like, okay, let's just mount this on that. So this is the body that's going to go on that 93. That's a longer term project. That one, effectively, that one's going to have to look just like that Camaro. It's going to have to go on a jig, and we're going to have to cut a whole lot of stuff out of it. But that's a 65 Mustang, V8 car, automatic transmission. It's got the 5-lug wheels. It's not a K-code, but it was decked out pretty nice. And I'm not a Ford guy, but I kind of like the early Mustangs. If I found a fastback top, we'd mount a fastback top on it, but I don't see me buying the sheet metal to do that. Anyway, that's a longer term project. Here's the short bed 63. Now, this truck's not in bad shape, and the good thing is I got like, I don't know, I think I've got 5 parts trucks for this, so I haven't decided what we're gonna put in the big back window, but my thought is I'm gonna leave it like it is, but it's already a short bed. Those bed sides I showed you are going on this truck. I've actually had this truck running at one point. It's already set up for a small block and an automatic transmission. Looks kind of rough, but actually it's not in bad shape at all. I've gutted the interior when I got it, so hopefully the mice don't want to hide up around everything because I've just gutted it all out. But we'll see. Anyway, that one I kind of want to get started on. Remember in the first video, I said I was going to put this Explorer chassis under a 57? Well, now I'm going to show you the 57. There's the hood and fenders. They need a little work, but they'll work. Let's go look at the cab. So, here's the 57. It was our old wheat truck. You can kind of see what's left of the wheat truck. It went through a flood on the river and we drug it out of there, but really haven't done much with it. So I've always liked the 57s with the single headlights. You know, I guess it could be 55 or 6, but I like the 57s. So we're gonna build one. If you don't know, the front fenders on that 1.5 ton are wider than a 1/2 ton fenders, and the opening is bigger. So you really need to find a 1/2 ton, 3/4 ton, and maybe a 1 ton. I don't know. Front fenders to make it look like a pickup. Otherwise, you're gonna have to put some big tires on it. So if you make a 4-wheel drive, right, with big tires, these fenders will work for you. This truck, like seemingly everything else I got, this truck needs some work. Now, we got that truck, it was already painted, but over the years I've noticed that thing's got a lot of Bondo in it. When we start cutting and grinding, I don't know where it's gonna end, but at the end of the day, I like the 57s. So this truck is gonna get the Explorer chassis that I showed you. I think it's gonna be pretty close to the right width. We'll have to lengthen the frame, but you know, that's no big deal. Kind of what you're seeing is I got lots of bits and pieces, and I am ready to get these projects up on wheels so they look like a vehicle. It's hard to get motivated with that, but if I get that on a frame with the front end and it looks like a pickup, okay, it's easier to get going on it. All right, that's why I want to get the 67 up and put together. The 63, I want to get it out, and I want to get them kind of lined up. I got one more to line up. Let's go look at it. So I'm showing you this one because this one's a 5-window, but this isn't the truck we're going to build. I'm going to take 5-window piece and we're going to put it on this other truck. Well, I thought we'd stop on the way to the to the follow-up of the 5-window. This is a 65 Ford short wide bed, and this is a 63. Now, quite honestly, I'm a whole lot more partial to this 63. This was our hay truck that I've got lots of miles on this. Both my boys got lots of miles on this, so this is the one I want to build. My oldest son really likes that one better because he's got lots of bad experiences with this. I mean, the steering wheel's got like a 3/4 turn in it, and so when he was learning to drive, this was a challenge. And it's 3-speed on the column, by the way, and the clutch was most often the clutch was almost burnt out because it's just a little 1/2 ton and had a, I don't know, like a 273 gear, and we had a brown bell spike on it, and so we were always burning the clutch out of it. It's got 223 6-cylinder in it. Anyway, I want to build this truck. This is the one that I am pondering really hard about whether I want to use the crown in here. This is a nice bed. This is a nice bed, and I don't know if I'm real eager of cutting this thing up, so I haven't decided exactly how we're going to build this one. And if you guys are familiar with these Fords and crown swaps, this one has the steps, right? When you open the door, it's got a step. It's got a step down there, and you gotta cut that step out back there to get the Crown Vic frame to fit. Now, the 65 on the other hand, the Crown Vic frame will actually fit on that one, so I don't know. Kind of where I'm at. I really like the package of what's on that Crown Vic in terms of the suspension and brakes and everything. I just don't know if I'm willing to cut this one up. So we may end up putting that on a Crown Vic frame, because that one should fit on there. All right, that doesn't have the steps, so you should be able to put that cab on there. But we'll see. I've got at least one 9-inch for these trucks. I may have two, so that we may end up doing something like that. I don't know. This one I want to get done because, like I say, there's lots of history with this truck, but I want to make sure I got a plan before I start it. So I don't know where we're at on this one. And again, I'm not a Ford guy, but this truck's going to run again. All right, we're almost done. I got one more to show you after this, but this is a 40, I think it's 48. I may be wrong. It's a 48 or 9. I can't remember what years had the full glass. Maybe both years. I don't know. This truck's only got like 35,000 miles on it. It was a farmer's wheat truck, and it's set outside. All that rust came from after I owned it because I didn't have a place to put it inside. But this body's in really good shape. Again, when it came home, I cleaned it out, vacuumed it out. I really would like to put the 5 windows in there, but we'll see how that works out. But this is the one we're gonna build. And I'm thinking this needs to go on an Explorer chassis also. There's just too many good things about that fit. And I've got 3 parts trucks that are half tons, so I've got the half ton front end. Again, just like the 57, the bigger trucks, they got bigger wheel wells, and on the big trucks, the hood is shorter. On the half tons, that hood is taller, right? Because you need more space on the wheels. But anyway, I've got half ton front end, and that's the last pickup project. And the last one I want to show you is we're going to go up in the barn, and I don't know how it's going to turn out, but we'll go up in the barn. We'll see if I can show you the little Datsun. Okay, here's a little Datsun. It kind of looks nasty and dirty, but actually the body's in pretty good shape on this. I don't have all the bits and pieces. The convertible top frame is there, but it's missing things. I don't know where the headlights and tail lights are. Still got the original motor, drivetrain. Far as I can tell, it's pretty much original. The seats are still in it. So this is what we plan on putting that V6 in. Have no idea how much trouble we're going to get into, but I think this would be a fun little car. That V6 ought to be more than sufficient to make this a fun driver. Like I say, I'm not real knowledgeable about the Datsuns and the swappability of them. This is going to be a learning experience, and we're going to figure it out as we go along. Well, I think I covered most of the projects that's at least on my radar. You might be asking, which one are we going to do first? First, we're going to see if we can get this thing at least running and driving and tidying up the holes. I'm not a big fan of Flintstone mobiles, so once we get the mechanicals and everything up and going, then I want to fix some rust on it. I don't know if you can... This is the passenger side inner fender well. Now I'm going to go look at one of the other trucks and see if it's better. I hope it is, but if not, we're gonna have to fix this. This one's pretty rusty. It's on the battery side, and I mean, if you're familiar with all these old cars, the battery side is always rusty. So if I can find a better one, we're gonna take it off one of the parts trucks. Then primarily we gotta fix rockers and cabs. Or the floor in this is weak. Actually the rockers aren't that bad. The cab corners are shot. And there's rust around the bottom of the windshield. If any of you guys are international folks out there, underneath that cowl is full of leaves. And I haven't quite figured out how I'm supposed to get those out. I'm actually thinking I'm gonna have to cut the shoulders so I can get in there, because I don't want the leaves in there. Anyway, anybody knows how to clear those leaves out, put it in the comment, let me know. I want to get the lathe up and running. I'd like to clear my bench off, right? I showed you the disc brake. I'd like to clear the bench off, so I'm working diligently to try to get this lathe up and running so I can get that rear end finished. I'm thinking that rear end is going to go under the 63 that I showed you. That would be my first pass on that. This rear end should be about 1.5 inches wider than the 63, which shouldn't cause a problem. I would like to get that done first so I can clear off the workbench here and set that rear end aside. And when we bring the 63 in, the rear end's done. So the top priority for me when this International can back out is I'm going to drag that Camaro over here in this hole, and we're going to finish the metal work on that Camaro so I can get that stinking thing dropped down on wheels. I am ready to prime those. I really hate having to do things twice, but the Mustang, I'm going to have to go over the whole thing. I'm going to have to take surface rust off of it and get them primered. So that is the #1 priority, is to get both of those cars, that 67 Fastback and that 67 Camaro, to get both of those an epoxy primer. So then we can focus on doing the final body work on those things. There's more than I think there is. You don't really see what's going on until you get it all one color and you're like, oh shit. So that's the plan at this point. Not, this is Random Rod Shop. Plans change, but that's kind of what I got. That's what's on my brain for going into 2024. Priorities, get this thing where it moves and drives. So, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We try to have a lot of fun here. I hope you enjoy the videos. So, subscribe, make a comment, share the videos with your friends, and until next time, we'll see what's going on.